Let's dig into the symmetric constraint in Autodesk Inventor and see what we can do with it. I'm going to start with just a simple little rectangular part up here so I have something to work on, and then we'll get going with a new sketch and the symmetric constraint. What I want to do to this part is cut out a couple of little circular notches from each side. I'm going to draw an arc along each side of this part. There's one and there's the other. And what I want to accomplish with the symmetric constraint is to ensure that these two arcs are always exactly the same, but to do this without cluttering up the sketch with too many dimensions. I could always come in here, dimension this arc, then dimension this one, even make it the same. I can go through all that. And for something this simple, that might work just as well. But as sketch geometry gets more complex and you've got more things going on, using the symmetric constraint really can save you a lot of clutter and a lot of time in your sketches. Let's see again what the symmetric constraint says about itself, is that it constrains selected lines or curves to be symmetric about a selected line. That means we need a line down the middle to use as our line of symmetry. I'm going to make it a construction line because I don't need it to be part of my final extrusion. Turn construction back off and we get back to our arcs. All we have to do is come up here and click on symmetric. And if you look down in the bottom left corner over here, it guides us in what to do. Select first sketch element. We'll use the arc on the left. Now it says select second sketch element. We'll use the one on the right. And now select a line of symmetry. And it shows us that that constraint symbol that pops up on all three of those, that it is this arc, and this line all coming together in that symmetric constraint. So that means now whatever I do to one arc, however I move it around, that will happen to the other arc as well. But we need to apply some more constraints and dimensions to get exactly what we want. I want to put the center point of this arc always horizontal to the origin point of this sketch. So that way they always stay right on the middle. I can't move that up or down now. Now I am going to apply a dimension here from the top line to the edge of my arc here, or to that endpoint, so that I always have a little bit of meat there at the edge so it doesn't come out the end. And then I'm going to apply another dimension to say I always want it to cut into the block a certain distance. Notice I don't need to apply a radius or a diameter to this arc, because what I really care about right now is having some meat here and having a certain depth here between the edge and the far point of that arc. But look at what we have accomplished now. Our sketch is fully constrained. The geometry has turned black, and now, again, just to illustrate the beauty of constraints and what we want to accomplish with our constraints, is that whenever I change this dimension up here, I can make adjustments and everything updates automatically. I'm going to undo to get back to where I was. There we go, with 0.250 on both of those. Then I'm going to finish that sketch, extrude and cut both of those arcs. There they are equal, they are symmetric around the center of this block. Now I'm going to use this block. I'm just going to start sketching on the front here just to go a little deeper into the symmetric constraint so we can see how it works and some of its behavior. I'm going to draw a line this time. Let's just create a construction line right across the middle of this part, and I'm going to work above and below that construction line as I create more geometry and apply some symmetry constraints to it. Let's start with a point, just a point. I'm going to put one above and one below and apply a symmetric constraint to them. One point, then the other, then the line. You have to go in that order. And now we can see how those 2 points move together. If I apply dimensions to one of them, then that applies to the other as well, and that will get those 2 points constrained. I see what I did not get is that symmetry, or get that that line of symmetry fully constrained. So I'm going to stick it to that origin with a coincident constraint. And now those 2 points and that line of symmetry are fully constrained. Now I'm going to move along over here to a circle first. I'm going to draw a little circle above and below. Notice they are 2 different sizes and they are not moving at all relative to each other. And I'm going to apply a symmetric constraint this time just to the center points of these circles, then around that line. Now, see what I get is that they move together, but those 2 circles are not always going to be the same size. If I want them to be the same size, I'm going to show all constraints first. I'm going to delete that first one because that would be a little redundant to apply another symmetric constraint at this point. I'll hide my constraints, but then apply a symmetric constraint to the circle, and now we get them symmetric, mirrored around that line in position as well as size. If I go on and apply more dimensions to this, I now position the center point, and then I can apply a dimension to that arc as well, or to that circle, and now those 2 circles are fully constrained. Let's clean this up a little bit, get some of this other geometry off of here, and now we're going to move on to lines and see what happens when I apply symmetric to lines. Symmetric constraint, first line, second line, a line of symmetry. We have our angle matched. Let's take this, let's put an angle on there, and then I'm going to constrain this end with dimensions. Dimensions are constraints. There, now this endpoint of this line is stuck in place. This one is still free to move, but look at what can happen down here. This line is still free to extend in either direction. It is the position of the line that I constrain with a symmetric constraint. If I don't pick the endpoints directly, then they are not going to be part of that symmetric set. So what I can do now is make sure it's off to start with so we see what happens. Is do symmetric point to point around that line. And while that command is active, I can come up here and do the same thing to these endpoints as well. And that gets those lines moving together so that if I then apply another dimension to that line, that gets everything fully constrained. Let's move over here to the other side, and I want to this time throw a couple of arcs up here. Go back to where we started with this. We did 2 points, and a point is a single thing. It is just a point. You constrain one point symmetric to another point. It is stuck in place. The circle is sort of like 2 entities. It has that point, but then it has the circle itself. A line gets into even more entities because it has the line itself, and it has one endpoint, it has the other endpoint, it even has a midpoint that we could use if we wanted to. So there are multiple things within a line that we could constrain. Now take a look, though, at an arc. I can have even more possible entities in this arc. I have this endpoint, I have this endpoint, I have the center point, and then I have the arc itself. So I've got 4 things that I might work with, and I certainly could just come in here and constrain one center point and the other center point symmetric around that line. But I at least would want to start with the arc so that those 2 arcs now are symmetric. Let's draw some lines off of these arcs. Let's connect them to the sides of this part. Notice none of these are tangent at this point. I'm going to apply tangent constraints to all this. Here's where things can get a little messy. Things start jumping out of place. So what we need to do, we need to start applying some dimensions. In general, I think it's considered a best practice to apply constraints first and then dimensions. But sometimes things can get a little out of hand if we don't put something in place first. We're going to see if we can recover this. Let's make a smaller radius there. All right, now we're getting somewhere, getting this cleaned up a little bit. So I have these two arcs that are symmetric to each other and that they are in the same position. They are the same radius and they are free to move, and they are going to move together. Let's keep applying some dimensions. Now that arc turns black, but something important to consider about constraints is that just because the entity has turned black, it does not mean that its endpoints are fully constrained. So what can I do here? Let's apply a symmetric constraint to these two lines and those two lines. And now, maybe some dimensions up here. As I apply these dimensions, everything now is fully constrained. But you see what it gets us. I'm going to move things around a little bit just so it's a little cleaner. But I've got all of my dimensions up here, and whatever I do up top happens down on the bottom. And as we said earlier, that keeps this sketch cleaner, makes sure that everything that I do up here also happens down here. I'm going to delete, I don't need to delete all of that. I'm just going to delete the lines on this side. I don't need all of that over there. Well, let's finish this sketch and we can use those two little notches that we drew to cut through this part. One more thing to keep in mind that I will demonstrate quickly is we've been working horizontal and vertical with our symmetry line so far, and that doesn't have to be all the time. It can be, so dimension up here just to get it constrained and locked in place. Your symmetry line can be at an angle. Let's suppose we drew a slot up here and then a slot on this side. And let's just start constraining. Let's put the center line of that slot, symmetric, end to end symmetric, this end to this end symmetric. That should be enough to get everything fully constrained as I apply some dimensions to this. I don't like that one. This is getting, it's going to get a little bit messy. That's okay, but we are just demonstrating here what it can do. I need a radius on that. Too big, they're sticking together. There we go, and I have those two slots now that are symmetric around that line rather than going horizontal or vertical. It can be at an angle. So I think we'll stop with this one for now and just leave it right there. Finish this one out with an extrusion. I know it got a little messy at times. Sometimes that can happen with constraints. Sometimes you just got to hit undo a few times and back up. Decide whether you need to go ahead and apply a different constraint or a dimension to get things stabilized a little bit before you keep going with your dimensions. But if this has been helpful to you, I'd love to get a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. In the next video, we will take a look at the equals constraint that is right up here after symmetric. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.